Hi there, welcome back to another TV6 Investigates Talks. That's our special digital series where once a week we check in with the Investigates team on stuff we're working on and go a little deeper into some of the stories and behind the scenes on some of the work that we do. And this week we're going to talk about elections. Presidential election on Tuesday, also elections at the county level, at the legislative level. These are the big ones. So I wanted to look at some of the numbers and see what some of the trends were in the data. And I think we can start in Scott County because that's where the biggest news was.
Yes.
And for the first time in 40 years, Scott County voted for a Republican at the top of the ticket.
Yeah, by about more than 3,000 votes.
Yeah, and this is what's interesting too. When I took a look back at that historical data, you know, from 2016 to today, we've only seen Trump gain in popularity in Scott County. His margins are larger and larger from election to election. So in 2016, he beat Hillary Clinton by about 1.5 percentage points. 2020, that was closer to 3, and then this year, 4 percentage points. And so, you know, that's a sign of a couple of things. One is, you know, he's just continuing to resonate and build a base and connect. But the other thing is that when I checked out other election data down ballot, you see Democrats winning on some of the same tickets that voted for Trump.
Yeah, like Bohannon.
Like in Scott County, right. Bohannon won here. Monica Kurth for the legislative seat is ahead at this point. That's a very close race still. Canvass is happening today, so we'll have more on that in a little bit. But it was fascinating just to be there on election night at some of the polling places when people were coming in. I was sort of talking to them after they were coming out about what issues were important to them. And you know, for Trump voters, it was border security, it was economy, and for Harris voters, it was reproductive rights and sort of this notion of saving the democracy. So those sort of mirrored nationally what voters were concerned about too. I do want to talk a little bit more about turnout too. We saw just a slight dip in turnout from the last presidential election. We were at 68.5% in 2016, and the turnout jumped a little bit, 70.08% in 2020, and then this year it dipped down very slightly to 69.83%. You know, you didn't see a huge surge in the number of people voting this year.
No, and there were a lot of early voting. We heard a lot about really long lines and everything, so I think a lot of us were kind of expecting that it would be a larger turnout this year.
Right. You know, the line at the Scott County building on the last day to turn in an early ballot, the line there stretched from the county building all the way outside. And, you know, if you know the area, there's a railroad tracks run right behind there, and that line was all the way out to those tracks. So just for perspective, that's probably a couple city blocks. So long lines there. Also, there was a delay in counting in the Bohannon race and Miller Meeks race and for the 1st Congressional District in Washington County. All the other precincts were reporting on Tuesday night except for that one county. Everyone was sort of wondering why, so I called over there the next morning, right, and talked to the auditor, and basically he explained that there were some concerns about one of the tabulators, one of the machines that counts votes. And so they alerted the Secretary of State when they had some concern about it. Secretary of State's office oversees elections. They had some representatives come over to Washington County. Wednesday morning they were meeting, taking a look at the machines and everything. And it turned out, you know, everything was fine. They counted the ballots, and you know, Miller Meeks came out ahead. But you know, it just goes to show you around, you know, how careful people are or cautious now around this notion of election security too. You know, they made sure to emphasize that the ballots were being kept in a locked vault while this was being figured out, so they weren't just laying around. Nobody had access to them, and then once the machines, you know, once they made sure that those were working okay, they were off and running. So that county was trending for Miller Meeks, who was ahead at the end of Tuesday night. So if you sort of projected that you were going to gain votes for Miller Meeks in Washington County. So even on Tuesday night, there was a good sense that Miller Meeks was ahead. You saw her essentially declare victory, saying that we won the district in her speech on Tuesday night, or I guess that was probably early Wednesday morning at that point. So Bohannon is not conceded in that race. And she said in a tweet yesterday that they were going to continue to pursue every lawful vote. So probably headed for a recount in that race. The way recounts work in Iowa, you have to be within 50 votes or 1 percentage point, whichever is applicable there. Certainly these margins for the Bohannon race are a little bit larger. I think last I checked, it was somewhere close to 800 votes, maybe a little more than that now.
And we heard a lot of questions about, is there going to be an automatic recount? And there's not an automatic recount. They have to request it
Right.
if the conditions met, what you just said.
Right. So the candidate, if it is outside that margin, they have to pay for it. Otherwise, the state does it automatically. I think one race where we're going to see another closer look to is in that Monica Kurth, Nathan Ramker race for a legislative seat. She's an incumbent. Ramker's challenging.
So the Scott County is doing a required audit. The Secretary of State picks a precinct out of every county that the county then has to hand count the ballots for, and they are recounting the presidential race and the sheriff's race in a precinct at a fire station in Bettendorf. So they started that at 9 a.m. today.
The sheriff race was not that close.
No.
Sheriff Tim Lane won. I think that was roughly 58.
Yeah.
42, yeah. So,
Somewhere.
yeah. So that one, you're not going to see discrepancies or anything change. But this is again just to make sure that everything got counted correctly, and we heard no problems of anything on election night other than that one small hiccup in Washington County. But other than that, it turned out okay. So let's wrap this up. We'll be back next week to take a closer look at a different story we're working on. In the meantime, you can check out all our election results and all the stories we worked on in the last week having to do with the elections on our website and news app. In the meantime, this is Heidi Connect. I'm Matt Christensen. Thanks for joining us.